They don't hate you because you hurt them. They don't even hate you because you left. They hate you because you're not theirs anymore. Carl Jung once said that the most terrifying thing a person can do is to become themselves. And to the narcissist, nothing is more threatening than that. You were easy to manipulate when you didn't know your own strength. Back then, you apologized for things that weren't your fault. You explained yourself 1,000 times just to be misunderstood. You gave more than you had, thinking it would prove your worth. That version of you? They loved that version, because that version belonged to them. But something changed. It didn't happen all at once. But piece by piece, you started returning to yourself. You stopped justifying your needs. You stopped begging for clarity. You stopped playing the part they cast for you. And that, right there, is when you became dangerous. According to Jung, when you begin to integrate the shadow, the part of you that was hidden, denied, repressed, you reclaim your personal power. To the narcissist, this is a threat. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer available to feed their fragile ego. They know they can't control you the old way anymore. So they shift. And what they do next feels confusing at first, because you thought they'd just let you go. But they don't. They double down harder, darker, colder. This is what Jung called the power inversion. A moment when the persecutor senses the balance tipping. When the puppet cuts the strings, and the puppeteer starts to panic. They'll say things like, "You're not who you used to be. You've changed. And not for the better. You think you're so above everyone now." At first, you might doubt yourself. You might even feel guilty, because their words echo all the insecurities you've tried to silence. But this isn't random criticism. It's targeted psychological warfare. Jung wrote that people who avoid their own self-awareness are drawn to others who do the inner work, not out of admiration but out of need. They feed off your light because they've refused to claim their own. And now that you've stopped letting them feed, they start to call your light a weapon. You set boundaries? You're cold. You speak up? You're aggressive. You no longer seek their validation? You're arrogant. This is strength shaming. Jung didn't use that exact phrase, but he described the dynamic clearly. The stronger you become, the more desperately they try to reframe your growth as betrayal. Because to them, your healing isn't just inconvenient. It's humiliating. They need you to stay broken. Not because they love your wounds, but because your healing reminds them they've refused to heal. And so begins their last tactic. The one you didn't see coming. The one Jung said is the most dangerous. But we're not there yet. First, they'll try to wear you down by rewriting your story. They'll bring up the past. Not to remember, but to reinfect. They'll say, "Remember how happy we used to be? You were so soft back then. So kind. What happened to that girl?" They'll romanticize your suffering. Glorify the version of you that tolerated too much. Turn your people-pleasing into a love story. But what they miss, what they always miss, is that you're not who you were anymore. Because you've begun what Jung called individuation. The sacred, irreversible journey toward your authentic self. And every time they try to pull you back, they fail. Because you finally know who you are when no one's watching. But don't relax just yet. Because when the guilt trips stop working, when the nostalgia fails, when shame can't touch you anymore, that's when they bring out their dirtiest trick. You've stopped answering every message right away. You've started saying no without explaining why. You're reclaiming pieces of yourself you forgot you even lost. And just as your world begins to feel calm again, they appear. But this time, something's different. They're not cruel. They're not cold. They're broken. They say things like, "I've been going through something. I didn't want to tell you before, but things are really bad right now. I just need someone to talk to. I didn't know who else to call." And just like that, the storm you escaped becomes a hand reaching out in the rain. You feel your boundaries begin to blur. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. Carl Jung warned us about this exact moment. He called it manufactured vulnerability. It's not a cry for help. It's a strategy. A last, desperate attempt to re-enter your life through the back door of your empathy. Because when manipulation and shame fail, they know there's still one thing left that might work. Your heart. and they know exactly how to aim for it. Jung observed that narcissists don't just stumble into crisis. They create it. They sabotage relationships. They implode their finances. They start drama with family, coworkers, or friends. And when it all falls apart, they choose one person to run to. You. Why? Because you've always been the one who rescued them. The one who gave the second chance, the third, the 10th. The one who saw the hurt little child beneath the cruelty and believed they could still be saved. But Jung urges us to look deeper. He wrote that narcissists are often acutely aware of your psychological blueprint. They remember your triggers, your guilt, your compassion, your trauma, and they know how to activate those instincts when they're losing control. So their timing isn't accidental. It's calculated. They don't come to you when you're weak. They come to you when you're finally standing tall. Why? Because that's when your fall would be the most tragic. They say, I know you're busy, but I really need you. You're the only one who understands me. Please, just this once. But this isn't about need. It's about power. Jung said the narcissist's ultimate goal is not just to return to your life, but to undo your growth, to test if they still matter more to you than your own healing. Because if you give in, if you cross that line just this once, they win. Not in the way you think. They don't care about closeness, connection, or reconciliation. They care about this, you shrinking again, you self-abandoning again, you making them more important than the person you've become. They care about proof. Proof that they can still crack you open. Proof that your strength was temporary. That your wholeness is fragile. That their shadow still lives in you. And the terrifying part? Sometimes, the crisis is real. They really are sick. They really did lose their job. They really are crying on the floor. But Jung's insight cuts through the illusion. Even in suffering, the narcissist performs. That doesn't mean they're faking their pain. It means they're choosing their audience. They could go to a friend, a therapist, a sibling, but they come to you. Why? Because you are the one most likely to surrender your boundaries. Because you are the one who still carries a pocket of guilt for becoming someone they can't reach anymore. But Carl Jung gives us a powerful antidote. He called it differentiated compassion. This is the art of feeling for someone without abandoning yourself. You can care without going back. You can listen without offering your soul. You can see their pain without making it your responsibility. Because healing doesn't mean you have to become heartless. It means you finally know the difference between being loving and being used. So when they come back in crisis, when they fall apart at your feet, right when you've learned to stand tall, ask yourself, is helping them bringing me closer to who I truly am? Or is it pulling me back into who I used to be? Jung wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that privilege must be protected, even from those who once held your heart, especially from them, because their final move isn't love. It's not vulnerability. It's not healing. It's a performance designed to rehook your empathy and unravel your independence, one carefully chosen moment at a time. But the show only works if you still believe it's real. You didn't just escape. You rebuilt. And you've begun to feel something sacred. Not pride, not victory, but something more silent. Peace. But peace doesn't last long when you're dealing with someone who can't feel whole unless you feel unsure. They can't control you directly anymore. So they get smarter, more subtle. And what they do next is invisible to the untrained eye. But Carl Jung saw it clearly. It's not a smear campaign, not a tantrum. It's the slow erosion of your inner authority. Let me explain. Jung said the self is not built through approval. It's revealed through conflict. And the narcissist, they specialize in manufacturing psychic conflict. Here's how. They begin to mirror your strength, but twist it just slightly, just enough to make you question it. You've changed too much. Healing shouldn't make you bitter. Don't become the very thing that hurt you. This spiritual journey, it's making you cold. They don't scream. They don't insult. They plant seeds. Because they know that if they can't break you, they can still make you break yourself. And that's the most dangerous war of all. The one that takes place inside your own mind. You start wondering, am I being selfish? Am I closing off? Am I wrong for walking away? But that's the trap. Jung called it the disintegration of inner voice. When your self-trust is so new, so raw, it becomes vulnerable to outside noise, especially from someone who once lived in your heart. They'll call it love. They'll say they're just worried about you. They'll frame their discomfort as concern. You don't seem happy anymore. This version of you, it's not you. You used to light up the room. But don't mistake their nostalgia for insight. They're not describing you. They're describing the version of you who made them comfortable. And now that version is gone. The truth is, the more solid your boundaries become, the more fragile they feel around you, because your growth exposes their stagnation. Your clarity highlights their chaos. Your independence reminds them that they don't own you anymore. And so, in desperation, they use the last tactic they believe might work. They try to convince you that your healing is actually your downfall. This is spiritual reversal. It's when someone takes your most sacred qualities, your self-awareness, your courage, your hard-earned silence, and paints them as signs that something is wrong with you. You're too independent now. You think you don't need anyone. You're cold. You used to care. But Jung warned us about this inversion. He said the ego will do anything to avoid facing the truth of its limitations. And the narcissist's ego? It is inflated, brittle, terrified. So rather than grow themselves, they try to pull you back into a space small enough for them to feel big again. But here's what they don't understand. You didn't grow to hurt them. You grew to find yourself. You didn't build walls. You built a home inside your soul. And now they're knocking on the door, pretending to be the architect. But this house? They don't have the blueprint anymore. Still, they will try. They will weaponize your sensitivity. They will say, you used to have so much empathy. Now you just walk away. You're numb. But Carl Jung gives us the mirror to hold up to these lies. He wrote that the path to the true self requires withdrawing projections. This means taking back the parts of you that others have tried to define for their own survival. You are not selfish. You are sovereign. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not arrogant. You are anchored. And their discomfort is not your responsibility. It's their reckoning. Jung said, to become conscious is the most painful thing we can do, and the most necessary, because once you become conscious of their tactics, their words lose power. Their crises lose urgency. Their shame no longer sticks. And that is what they fear most. They'll call it abandonment, but it's liberation. They'll call it betrayal, but it's truth. They'll call it cruelty, but it's the first real kindness you've ever shown yourself. So if you feel doubt creeping in, if the guilt claws at your ribs, if the memory of who you used to be whispers, maybe you're overreacting. Breathe. That's not your intuition. That's the echo of their conditioning. And you are not that person anymore. It ends quietly, not with a fight, not with a dramatic goodbye, not with closure. It ends the moment you no longer need them to understand. That's what Carl Jung meant when he said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. And the truth is, you've already integrated the lesson. You've seen the mask slip. You've watched them twist your growth into guilt. You've heard them cry out for help, not because they wanted healing, but because they wanted access. And you didn't fall for it. That's the real ending. The part they'll never acknowledge, but the part that changes everything. Because now you see it for what it is, pattern, a performance, a cycle that cannot survive in the light of your awareness. Jung said the true test of individuation is whether we can remain whole, even in the face of emotional seduction. They'll always try to pull you back, with tears, with blame, with nostalgia dressed up as hope. But your work now is silence, not silence as punishment, but silence as liberation, because some people don't need to be argued with. They need to be outgrown. And you finally have outgrown the role they wrote for you. That doesn't make you cruel. It makes you conscious. That doesn't make you heartless. It means your heart finally belongs to you. So what's next? Now you build. From your center. From your clarity. From your authentic self. The one that doesn't need permission to exist. And if they come back again, as they always do, you won't need to defend your peace. Because your life will speak for itself. You're not the same. And that's the point. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You've earned that privilege. Don't trade it back for guilt. Not even once. Because their control was never real. Only your freedom is. And this time you choose it. For good.